Welcome. We're presenting an event on strategies that we've come up with talking to hiring managers and just also our own experience in seeing candidates through the process of why you might want to relocate for work and how to go about researching relocation and what kind of packages you might be considering from hiring companies. So first, I want to cover some of the good reasons to relocate, and this is specifically work related. There's also cases where you might be relocating to be closer to family or something, and work is kind of a secondary consideration. This is specifically why would you relocate for work? And the two big ones would be career advancement. So say you have a very specialized skill or there's a very particular part of the biotech, biopharma, high-tech industry that you want to be a part of, and there's more opportunities for what you want to specialize in that area. Or if you're just getting started in the industry, you might be looking for areas where there's less demand for candidates with prior industry experience in the area. So there's going to be more opportunities for you to consider. The other one is if there's a really specific company that you want to work for and get in on ground level or mid-level and work your way up and stay with that company for a long time. The other aspect is quality of life. I would say something I'll focus on as we go through is it's not necessarily living to work, it's working to live. And also it's about looking for areas where potentially there's more affordable living for the life that you want, or more activities outside of work offered that appeal to you. Just some definitions for words we might be throwing around just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We'll be talking a lot about hubs and emerging hubs. Hubs are, when you think of areas that are rich in biotech, these are probably the regions that spring to mind. They're areas with traditionally very high numbers of biotech, but also there's an established infrastructure of funding opportunities, third-party resources as well to support them. And those would be places like the Cambridge, Boston area, San Francisco, Los Angeles, the ones you can see on this map that are the very, very high numbers. This is also an interesting site to go around and look at if you're trying to get a sense of just total numbers that are reported in the area. Emerging hubs are very interesting. They're areas where there actually are quite a few number of companies, not as many, but there's a big push of local and governmental investment in turning the area into, the next biotech hub. So there's opportunities that are emerging and really encouraged to emerge, but it's not going to be as dense as far as opportunities, and there might not be that third-party infrastructure in there already to support the companies. And those are places like Chicago, Philadelphia, Dallas, Fort Worth, but really any of these clusters that you're looking at here could potentially count as an emerging hub if they're not these very high numbers. Broadly, I think the best way to start this out is for pros and cons, framing it as these hubs and emerging hubs. What's the benefit of moving from a non-hub area to a hub area? And maybe you're already in a hub area and it's really crowded and you want to move to more one of the emerging hubs. What do those two directions look like? The first, moving to a hub area, the major pro is there's going to be a denser amount of opportunities, and there's going to be a lot of networking options should your situation change. If you join a company and find out it's not the ideal environment for you and you want to start looking again in a year or so, then there's going to be other opportunities in the area that you can find easily. There's usually competition. The pro of this competition for the same talent from many, many companies is sometimes, not always, sometimes it can lead to stronger benefit packages that will be offered to you from companies that want to stand out to strong candidates. And there's also going to be a large number of opportunities for collaboration. If you're in an area where it's, say, an incubator space or just a campus with a lot of companies, you're going to be able to meet and network with a lot of other professionals in your field and build that network. The cons are they're typically in cities with a higher cost of living. And there's also that aspect of competition. Because they're so recognized for the field, there's people who are looking to relocate specifically to these areas to build their career. So there can be a lot of competition for you if you don't have a lot of industry experience. Versus if you're moving to an emerging hub, they typically have lower costs of living. They'll still mostly be larger cities, but not as high cost. There's going to be potentially lower competition for roles. Yes, there will be less roles, but because they're not first and foremost as a hub area, there's going to be a lower concentration of scientists already there or scientists who are willing to relocate to those areas. So they can be a good opportunity to build yourself as an expert in the field. If there's a particular therapy, a particular technique you want to become very, very well-versed in and build your career around, it's a good opportunity to move in there, gain that skill, and then become one of the mainstays in the area with that expertise. The cons, as I mentioned, typically less opportunities should an offer not work out. Again, if you're looking to move in a year or 2 years to another company, there's going to be less competitors there to consider. And sometimes they're not always able to offer as high a compensation package. So we'll go through cost-wise. This can sometimes work out if it's a city with an already lower cost of living. But just if you're moving from a hub to an emerging hub, the sticker shock of a role that's less money than you're making now, that's something that definitely we've heard and noted before. The other relocation considerations that we'll touch on, family is a big consideration, we know, for some people. There's distance from a support system potentially. If you have a partner, if there's employment opportunities for them in their field in the area, and if you have children or dependents, what's the school system like in the area? I also want to note before we go into strategies that I know that some people are going to have work authorization as a consideration as well, especially if you're relocating from another country versus a state to state relocation. The thing I want to reiterate is our expertise is not in immigration law, and we recognize that even though we can share individual stories of how it might have gone for candidates, no two-person situations are identical. We really encourage you to keep that in mind and find the resources that will best benefit you, if that's an immigration lawyer or something that's offered through your campus. We've also included a link for visa information from the Department of State as well. I'm now going to hand it over to Beth to talk about the hiring manager side and give you a little bit of insight into what a relocation package would look like. I think we see companies that might on a job description say some relocation assistance available, but it's not specifically spelled out. What do those packages typically or not so typically look like, and what things could you potentially negotiate for?
Yeah, so some of the things to expect, a lot of the times companies may not have a quote unquote relocation assistance package. They may have it labeled as more of a sign-on bonus. This is used for relocation and other expenses that you would need to relocate. I spoke with a few companies on what their relocation packages or their sign-on bonus packages entailed. So a couple companies that we spoke to said between 5 and 10,000. So it depends on where you're relocating from, whether it's from out of the US, so maybe from Canada or Mexico. With this, it's a little bit simpler than if you were moving from overseas, but this would be a single payment of that 5,000 to 10,000, and that would be discussed individually. So it's not going to be a blanket, every candidate who's relocating will get this. There are more basic packages. It really just depends on the size of the company and what they are willing to offer right off the bat. Some of these companies, you may need to sign a contingency saying that you'll be employed for 12 months because they are giving you that bonus to be able to relocate. So they are giving you that extra on top of the salary that you're already be getting for that allotted time for that move. Some things that may be covered are storage costs. So you need to move more of your things ahead of time. Some companies may cover a storage fee. This is usually limited to a certain amount of days, maybe 30, maybe a month, maybe a few weeks, depending on what you have discussed with that company. Lease cancellation fee. So if you're currently leasing before you relocate or renting before you relocate, they may have a lease cancellation fee, and some companies will help cover that if it's maybe a full or partial coverage, but it's definitely something to discuss. And these are also things to talk to the hiring companies about. So it's not necessarily something that you can just assume. This is where you have to advocate for yourself, saying, I am taking this risk relocating. what can you offer me to make sure that it is a successful relocation? House finding trips. So if you have to fly out or drive or anything, they would cover the cost of flying or traveling at all. Maybe a hotel stay, rental finding assistance. So sometimes they have a lot of other places that they know in that particular area of where you could find housing or other things that may help you relocate to in a home versus having to kind of do that all on your own. So they would have a lot of opportunities for you as well. Some things to ask about as well is an incentive bonus. So this might also be part of that sign-on bonus. So if they are really, really wanting you to join their company because maybe you're moving to an emerging hub and they need a specialist and you are a scientist that is doing that, you can ask about an incentive bonus. So if you're saying this salary, I agreed to it with moving and moving my whole family or whatever kind of situation you're in, ask about that incentive bonus. It's not going to stop them from wanting you to take the job or to offer you. So these are things to definitely advocate for yourself. Transportation fund, a lot of companies in Boston, even in New Jersey, they are aware that transportation is most likely going to be like public transit or biking or walking rather than taking your own car or carpooling. So a lot of companies will have an allotment of transportation funds. So let's say $100 a month, and they have calculated that out so that you will have transportation costs covered, or they'll repay you, or however it may be set up. And every company is different. Any kind of free meals. So if they have like a break room where you can have lunch or breakfast, or they have a regular meeting where you can have that breakfast or anything like that. Anything to give you that added bonus are things to ask about in terms of needing to relocate. Maternity and paternity leave is very important. A lot of companies do offer that, but it is one of those things that if you are moving to an emerging hub and something comes up, or family planning in general, definitely make sure you're aware of their maternity and paternity leave, as well as childcare. So if they have free childcare, or if they know of any good childcare facilities, preschools, daycares, and then as Erin showed, you can look at the school districts and schools. These are all things to ask about when you're talking with the hiring team, because even if you're doing the research to find the school districts or the schools, they're living in that area. So they may have a better understanding of what schools would be top priority. And then another thing that's important is planning. You want to think of your timeline to moving. So a lot of companies will ask like, well, what's your earliest start date? And that's when you would have to think of if you can arrive a couple weeks to a month early, that would be ideal, because that gives you time to address the area, get your bearings on housing. If you have your family with you, get bearings on what your children might need or your spouse might need, packing, transit, unpacking, having an idea. Things change, things come up. So just having an idea will definitely be helpful, and it'll make it so you kind of have that goal in your head, and that way you're not necessarily blindsided by anything when you're doing that move. Don't rely heavily on temporary housing. If you are staying with a friend or staying with family for a little bit while you're getting you're moving underway, I would say limit that to as short as possible. So that way it's less stress on you, less stress on family and friends, because you're starting a new job at that time as well. So starting a new job and relying on family and friends can be a big stressor. Calculating expected costs early, so you have an idea. This is all about having an idea and just being prepared. Like I said, things can change, but at least you have a goal, or you have that image in your brain of what you can and can't afford. Thinking long-term is very important. When you are thinking long-term about relocation, we usually say because these companies, they are taking a large chance. They're giving you that sign-on bonus. They're helping with that relocation assistance. Even if they're not technically offering relocation assistance, they're still taking a big chance on you coming from out of the area, because you could come from out of the area and then change your mind, or something may not work out, and then they are out of an employee as well. So they want to make it work as just as much as you want to make it work. So we usually say, don't make any rash decisions right away. Obviously, you know yourself, you know, if something is not working out that first month, give it a little bit more time. Think long term. So is it going to be 5, 10? Is it a permanent move? You don't have to stay in that housing or in that area. Once you move, you can move to the surrounding areas, whatever you're comfortable with, but still think long term. When you're thinking about relocating or interviewing with companies, is this a company that I can see myself staying at for the next 5 years? Where do I see myself in the next 5, 10 years? So having that general plan and idea of what you're really wanting for your career is very important.
Yeah, and I would reiterate for the research, area is important too. And I think having that number in mind is helpful as you're looking at what all the area offers, what other opportunities are there, asking yourself, could I live here for 5 years, and trusting your gut instinct and not talking yourself into something that your gut's telling you, I don't feel so good about this area.
And a lot of that will be, you can kind of tell when you visit for on-sites, especially if you're coming out of the area, they'll usually have you stay a few days and kind of break it up, because they know that you are traveling from out of the area, and it can't be something where you can just drive on site, stay there for the day, do a presentation, meet the team, and then drive home. A lot of that can be discussed and figured out when you go for that, like testing the waters essentially. And during that time, I do recommend going out to restaurants in the area, asking some of the team members where are the best places to go, so you can test it out while you're there, even if it's just for an on-site and you haven't accepted the job offer yet, or they haven't even offered you yet. It's still nice to have that game plan in your head, an idea of what you're looking at if you were to accept that offer, because guaranteed they will offer you when you're already home. So then you're relying on pictures that you took or things in your brain and memory. Having that thinking ahead notion is very important. And it's super important to think it's a marathon, not a sprint. A lot of this is going to be happening over a longer course of time. Giving yourself time to adjust is very important. So it's taking care of yourself and your well-being, as well as giving yourself time to adjust to the new role and to learn. Anytime you start a new job, you have that grace period of, you don't really know what's going on, but you're learning a lot. And it's the same exact thing. It's just with relocation, now it's a whole new area for you to get in touch with and learn about. So setting that plan will be very helpful in the long run. Figuring out what to do with time away from work. So on the weekends, if you're not working weekends, or even nightlife, anything like that, going on walks through your neighborhoods, looking at festivals. So if they have posters throughout the town saying there's an antique fair, or it's almost Halloween time, there's a haunted house, go and do those things and get out of your comfort zone a little bit, just so you have an idea of what you can be doing around the area attractions. If there's particular stores that some of your new coworkers are recommending, go check them out, go to the movie theater, things like that. If possible, start with something more temporary like renting. So you wouldn't go right off the bat and buy a home. If you've already been to the area and you know this is where I want to be, then obviously you know yourself best, go with your gut. If this is someplace that you're going to stay for a long time because you're relocating to get closer to family or anything like that, then obviously look into buying those homes or anything like that. But setting down your roots slowly at first is highly recommended, because then it's a less of an added stressor, since you are starting your new role at that point as well.